All right, welcome in one final time for the 2025 NFL Draft. I'm Jeff Berckes, joined by lead draft analyst Jacob Infante. This is Bear and Balance, and they did it, Jacob. They did it. They finally drafted a running back. I gotta say, I was pretty worried, but we finally get a running back, a Rutgers running back, and I'm going to let you tell me how to pronounce his name.
Oh God. Okay. I have a guide. I have a guide. If you give me like 2-3 minutes, I wasn't ready. I've been saying Kyle Monangai. That's how I've been saying it this entire time. Uh
Where? All right. Well, that's fine. We'll figure out
yeah.
how to pronounce it later.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
not
get
as
around to it.
important.
We'll get around to
I'm
it.
going to start off. I'm not going to bury the lead here. I went through Dane Brugler's report on the Athletic, and he pulled a quote from Matt Rule, Nebraska's coach, and he Matt Rule called him the Matrix
Mm,
because he has quick feet to pick his way through the tackles, described as the Matrix.
interesting.
I love it. Unless I'm reading that wrong, maybe that he's just saying the Matrix is the football field, but it sounded to me like that he was giving him that nickname. So
That's
I,
what it sounds like to me.
I mean, a running back, seeing the field like the Matrix, I'm in. I like that. I'm already sold. But sell me more. Where'd you have him on the board? What do you know about him?
Yeah, so I'm a fan of this pick. I think that look, he's probably going to be one of the lower relative athletic score athletic testers. You're going to find that Ryan Poles is actually going to use a draft pick on because I know we've been talking all day three here of prioritizing athletic traits and stuff like that. Monangai is just a good football player. Uh, and I think that so I had him 178th overall, putting him roughly around that round 5 range. So to get him in round 7, I think is really good value. Average breakaway speed, and he's short. I think that's what drops his RAS score significantly down. But you turn on the tape, and I honestly didn't know that they called him the Matrix, but you turn on the tape, it makes sense because he's very tough to tackle, and he's a very creative runner. So when you look, his patience in between the tackles, his ability to vary his tempo coming out of the backfield and find an open running lane to work with, and then once he finds it, to accelerate and explode through it is very good. He's shifty. He can change direction subtly very well. He's good at making defenders miss in the open field. He's not the biggest running back out there, but he does a good job of keeping a low center of gravity and keeping his legs churning through contact. So he's to put it short, he's very tough to tackle. And I know I was just doing a little bit of last minute research in here. He finished 4th in college football in forced missed tackles,
Okay.
and everyone else who was ahead of him has already been drafted.
Sure.
So I think it was Ashton Genty. I'd have to go through and check the others. I think Taj Brooks was one of them, but it's all 3 of them were guys who have been drafted already, and then Monangai. So as far as shedding tackles, as far as making guys miss, Monangai was the best on the board, just statistically from a factual perspective. Uh, so I like this pick. I really do, and I know I get at the risk of I'm hyping up every single Bears pick. Naturally, I'm going to be excited and try and look on the optimistic side for every single one of these picks. But Monaghan in particular, I'm looking at it as, all right, do I think this guy's going to be a star? Probably not. Do I think this guy's going to be the RB1 in Chicago? Probably not. But I do think he's going to be a contributor. I think if there's anyone who's going to be the Bucky Irving of this class, someone who doesn't test very well, but he just has it and he knows how to play the game of football, I think Monangai is going to be that guy. Again, I know Bucky Irving did really well for the Buccaneers. I'm not saying Kyle's going to have exactly those high of numbers, but I think if there's anyone out there who's just a pure good football player in this class, Monangai is going to be that guy.
Well, and that's what we've been talking about today. Like you said, like we've been talking about taking traits, obviously prioritizing that, trying to get a lot of speed on the defense. Like that was clearly something that they were looking to improve there. And then you just got a good football player. And that's the other half of it, right? There's just like some good football players that might test that not that well and may not project to that next level. But when you talk about running backs, there's so many different ways to succeed at running back, right? It's not just about testing numbers. And if you know how to play ball and you know how to, negotiate the offensive lineman to set up blocks. I mean, I have wanted to talk about running backs this entire time because there's so many good ones. And so to just kind of set this up, Dane Brugler's got a 4th to 5th round grade on Kyle here. Okay. So he has a lot of draftable running backs in this class. It's a very big class in terms of that. So if you wanted to play this from a strategy standpoint, you could wait like the Bears did until round 7 and get a guy that probably was rated, multiple rounds earlier than that. It's not, the shape of every draft is a little different. The strengths of the draft, the position needs and availability and all that stuff. Right. But we knew this was a strong draft coming in, one top guy at the top in Genty, but there was a lot of really talented players that had draftable grades in the early and mid rounds. And so it was seeming to get us, both of us, a little nervous here that we weren't seeing one of those guys be drafted. But I'm sure that these guys, one, they've been sniped multiple times by running backs. That seems very obvious, and where they went and how the Bears traded back. But you get a mid-round level caliber player here with Monangai, but you can save your final pick for him, right? So to me, this was a very shrewd way to spend the running back pick. It just made a lot of people nervous because it's such an obvious need. And I think that you go all the way back to Thursday night. If Ashton Genty would have somehow made it to 10, Ashton Genty would be a Chicago Bear. This was an absolute need for the Bears and something that they need to find somebody to take carries in this offense. And, obviously they would love someone to kind of transform that. So I think there's a real clear runway hit for him to compete and get on the field. It may not be right away because that's asking a lot of any rookie, but if any rookie position does get on the field quickly, it's running backs. So what's the running back room stack up like here? Is there any, do you see a fit in terms of, skill sets for, does he do things that DeAndre Swift doesn't do, that Roshan Johnson doesn't do? Where do you see him fitting in the current room?
Yeah. So I think Monangai is a little bit interesting because I think that Swift and I think Roshan are two kind of extreme ends of the bargain, or different ends of the spectrum, where Roshan's just, run up the middle, run in a straight line, lower the shoulder, power back sort of deal. And DeAndre Swift struggles in between the tackles. He struggles as a downhill runner, but he's a lot better in space. I think Monangai is a mix of the two. I think that his approach as a runner in between the tackles isn't exactly the same as Roshan. I mean, he's not as big, he's not as strong, he's not as aggressive, but he relies a lot more on finesse. And I think that at least at Rutgers, whether or not it'll translate to the NFL, we'll see. But at Rutgers, he looked like a much more capable decision maker as a downhill runner than DeAndre Swift did in the NFL this past year. So that said, I think Monangai is I'm trying to think of the best way to put this, because he's not as fast as DeAndre Swift. He's not as shifty as DeAndre Swift, but he has better vision and better contact balance than DeAndre Swift. He's not as big or as powerful as Roshan Johnson, but he's shiftier and has better vision than Roshan. So I think he's just a good, well-rounded back, and he can pass protect too, I think is another thing that a lot of Bears fans are going to be very happy about. He's, not the biggest back, but a good thing about being short is about having that squatty frame, naturally better leverage. It's easier to win the pad level battle. And I think Monangai does that really well. So I expect him to factor into the rotation, probably, start off on the depth chart as the fourth stringer, but I anticipate that he'll rise up pretty quickly. And I think by the end of the preseason, we'll be looking at him as the third stringer. I think he can surpass Travis Homer. And then we'll see if he can surpass Roshan. I think it's certainly possible because at this point, I mean, Roshan's shown he's a good goal line back and not much else at this point. So I wouldn't be shocked if by the end of the year, Monangai's factoring into the backfield pretty heavily. I don't think he's going to overtake DeAndre Swift by any means, but I think he can be a very good running back too.
Awesome. I think that's great. You want to slap a quick grade on this pick and we can get out of here for the 2025 draft.
Yeah. So I'm going to end this on a high note. I'm going to give it an A. I think that it's a position the Bears desperately needed. And Monangai is just a damn good football player. I think that this is not the sexiest running back pick you can make by any means. I know a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, why did we wait this long?" The crazy thing is, and I don't want to go too long, but I had a higher grade on Monangai than I did on Woody Marks, and the Texans traded a future third for Woody Marks, and the Bears are getting Monangai in the 7th round. So now, granted, I didn't have Monangai as my top running back available, but he was certainly one of the top guys available. So I'm very excited about this pick. I'm going to give it an A.
Great place to end it. And thank you for doing all of these picks with me, even though you were on site in Green Bay. That was, quite an adventure. And thanks for everybody for listening to these little recaps. And we will certainly have a lot more on the full class, and we'll do some dives later. But these little snippets are kind of fun to do. And until next time, everybody, bear down.